Welcome to Elevate at Home. I'm Mike Barker.
And I'm Samantha Barker.
And we're your team behind Elevate, where we build dream outdoor spaces like custom hardscapes, pools, and more.
On this podcast, we'll take you behind the scenes of our industry, sharing insights, answering your questions, and giving you an inside look at our projects.
Plus, we'll be joined with industry experts, other business owners, and even our customers to share their experiences.
Whether you're planning a project, in the industry, or just love great outdoor spaces, you're in the right place.
Let's dive in. This is Elevate at Home. All right, welcome back to Elevate at Home. We are pretty excited. This is episode 2, and this episode we're going to be talking about the build process in a pool process. So,
what to expect from start to finish?
What to expect. So, we'll talk about some things that you need to be aware of as far as when you're planning this project. Some things that will come up as far as maybe some hiccups. We'll talk about maybe a little bit of permitting. Excuse me, the day one and excavation, and kind of how we typically say we come destroy our way in and fix our way out. So
I was gonna say we'll talk about from the first initial consultation all the way to you enjoying your pool.
Yes. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna dive right into it. So yeah, let's talk about the initial consultation and kind of like what is the first what's the first thing when someone calls us to, reach out for a pool?
Yeah, so normally the first step in our process, at least in our process, is a initial phone call. So whether that's with Kate, me, or you, we have that discovery call where we go into all the details and kind of collect all of the information that we can so we can know, number one, if we're a good fit for you, if you're a good fit for us, and if this is going to be something that is going to work out.
Yeah. So she does a great job, in that first initial phone call, getting a lot of basic information to say, is this going to be a good fit for us, but also are we going to be a good fit for you? And, kind of collect that basic information, and then we move to a discovery call, right?
Yeah.
So, after that first initial phone call coming in or lead submission, we go into a discovery call, which is typically with myself, and that's where we really dive into, the nitty gritty of why you're wanting to do a project. Finding out really the motive. I mean, I spend a lot of time just figuring out the why, and really diving into, how this is going to be, one of the best decisions of your life, really. So, we go into that discovery call. We talk a little bit about budget, a little bit more in depth on, what certain things might cost, what the pool might cost, what the pool surround, some of the other things that are involved with, the entire project. And then, from there we will talk about, design. Does it make sense to do a design? Does it not make sense to do a design? Make sure that all parties are on board and, both husband and wife want this. We want to know who are all the decision makers. And we had one couple, their kids were helping make the decision of, what they wanted to do in the project. And so that was kind of fun, getting everybody's opinion, but we want to make sure we get as much information as possible. And then we do our site consultation, kind of moving forward, and we actually come out on site and explore what's possible.
I was just going to say the next step in our process is doing that on-site consultation. So as long as, we have that good phone call and everything does make sense to move forward, from there we move into an on-site consultation. And during that on-site consultation, you come on site, you're going to walk around, you're going to take lots of photos, lots of measurements, talk about some design elements, kind of go through what the vision that the customer has for their space is and give your input on what you might think would work in their space. And then if necessary, which usually it is, because like I'm like a lot of people where I'm not very visual. I cannot see what you're talking about until you show it to me. So that's why it's so important for most of our clients to do a 3D design.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll talk about the design and we'll talk about, another thing is talk about the elevations to make sure that we can do what we want to do in the design. And typically it's always possible. But once we start talking elevations, that's when it's really going to start increasing the price of the project is, anything that goes up. And so another thing that we will also do possibly is we'll do a hand sketch, and we'll do like a scaled hand sketch on site. That's something new that I just started doing. So that way you kind of have an idea like right then and there of what we're talking about, making sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We're all comfortable moving forward. And that hand sketch really is just, it's so helpful for someone like you to be able to see, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking. And then we will talk about moving forward, if we want to do a 3D. And in a 3D rendering, that's really where we're going to have lots of elements. We're going to have not just the pool, but we might have a pavilion, a fireplace, an outdoor kitchen. There's some elevation, so we got to see what the retaining walls and what the steps are going to look like coming down to these areas. And so that's where the 3D really just paints the picture so well before we even get started.
Yeah.
Yep. So, once we do the 3D presentation, we'll do that typically virtually. You'll be on your computer, we'll be on our computer, and we'll go through that, presenting the design. We'll make some revisions there. And once we're through the revision process of the design, we'll have a proposal, all done up. Everything on our end is all a la carte. So I shouldn't say everything, but a lot of things, a lot of elements are a la carte where, we have, the things that are with the pool. But if you want to add, heat, you want to add lights, you want to add a pavilion, we have different selections for different materials and whatnot. So once all of that is selected and approved, that's kind of when we move into the next step with moving forward and starting permitting and kind of getting that ball rolling to actually start the project.
Yep. Yeah. So once we have final approvals on everything and we have signed contracts, we take a deposit. And then as soon as we have that deposit, we're getting to work in the office on permitting. We're ordering your materials. If you're doing a fiberglass pool, we're ordering that shell immediately. And then, yeah, we start getting all of these things that we need for your project right away.
So then we'll start with, like the permitting process and getting that all rolling. And like we said, we get everything. We found out during COVID that being able to order materials ahead of time, and sitting on them, it really helped the job flow and really helped from having potential delays in the project. And so we have just adopted that as our method, and that's what we've stuck to, and it's worked out really well.
And so once we have the materials on hand or materials ordered, so we know a time frame that we're looking at, that's when we'll put your job on our schedule tentatively. And then we'll kind of go from there as far as scheduling. Yeah.
So, typically we'll have a really good rough idea of when it's going to be. And I learned, kind of a while ago, just, hey, early summer.
Yeah.
And it's not like even saying June, there's just so many delays that happen in construction that, June can turn into July, but June can also turn into May. So
right.
It really depends on a multitude of different things. But once we have a scheduled date, as soon as really once your pool is scheduled for delivery, that's the date. That is the hard date. And we're talking fiberglass pool delivery, of course. But once that is scheduled for delivery, I mean, that is the date.
And we stick to that.
And we stick to that because there is so many things, so much logistically that needs to fall in line in order for everything to go smoothly. And that pool is going to be there on that day. Everything else needs to work around that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we have a pool delivery date of, let's just say next Wednesday, we're going to be there Friday doing the site layout, confirming that with the homeowner, making sure that they're, okay with all the site layout. And then equipment's typically dropped off then. And then Monday is when we'll start the dig. We'll have materials on site. And we'll start everything, with that first step, that first pool process and getting the project going. So, that's when we start making the mess, day one.
That's the fun part, right?
That is the fun part, typically.
Yeah.
So, with the pool installation process, I mean, it basically is, dig, get your base right, and plop the pool in the ground. I'm oversimplifying that, right?
I wish it was that easy.
We'll do another one, getting a little bit more into it. But, for a fiberglass pool, I like to schedule it on a Wednesday so that we have 2 days. It depends what the size of the pool is and what site access. There's a lot of different things that go in with that. But we like to schedule it in the middle of the week if we can, so that way we have, a good chunk before, the pool gets there to get a lot of things done. We'll run pipe, we'll set up the equipment pad, we'll make sure that we're all based in, everything's on site, ready to go. And then, we drop that in Wednesday, and then we're starting to plumb immediately. And in a fiberglass pool, once that pool gets dropped in the ground, we are working very, very diligently to make sure that pool gets plumbed up and we can get water in it right away, because, that's what's holding that shell in place, is we need that waterway down there. So
it's very methodical how we have to do everything. So I kind of want to touch on how much goes on behind the scenes before we start the excavation.
Yeah.
So like you did say, it's a very logistical process. So here's just some of the elements that we have to plan out behind the scenes before that pool even goes in the ground. So we have to get the pool on order. We have to schedule the delivery date. We have to make sure our supplier can get our stone to the job site. We have to make sure that we have all of our plumbing and all of our materials on site before the pool is there. Mm-hmm. We have to have all of our equipment there. We have to schedule a crane operator to move that shell. Like, there's so much that goes into this. So, yeah, you're like, you just dig the pool and drop it in the ground. But
base material needs to be delivered.
So much that goes on that we don't really... If you don't think about it, then you don't think about it. But
if we're hauling soil out, we have to either work with, our truck needs to be available. Our big triaxle, or we need to hire a truck or two out to get that out. We do all our digs in house. We used to have to deal with an excavator. Mm-hmm. We've got pool water, pool base
and that
material.
Has to be specific to when the pool is delivered, because, like you said, once you get that shell in the ground, you're hitting the ground running.
Yeah, it's a very exact time. And so, the pool water, and then we, some municipalities want an open hole inspection, so we can't.
That's got to be scheduled ahead of time.
We can't put the pool in until the open hole inspection's done. Vinyl liner needs a footing inspection prior to when you can backfill. So there's just so many different things, and
it all has to be done in a very specific timeline.
It does, and it's crammed into 4 to 7 days, all at once, and so to get that pool in a timely manner, there is just a lot that is involved with it, a lot that goes on, and so, Then you got concrete, you got your
electrical, your
concrete
gas,
bond beam. Yep, you have to bond all your electrical points.
Electrical inspections, your bonding inspection.
Auto cover needs to go on. So, oh my goodness, it's just
there's a lot.
There is a lot. There's a lot, and it's really made us good at project management for the rest of the project, because the pool is the thing that takes the most amount of things that need to line up, very efficiently. And it needs to be communicated to our team in a way to where they know what's going on also, because, if it's all in my head, it doesn't really do any good. So they know what's going on too. So,
that excavation process starts chaos.
Yep, it does. It does. And, so once the pool is in the ground, it's still go. And, everything gets plumbed up. Bonding is a very important thing. You want to make sure that you have the proper contractor. Typical. Your electrician comes in and bond it, or we do our bonding points and then have that inspected. And that's a big thing before we can move forward with another process, doing the final concrete collar around the top of the shell. That needs to be inspected. And
will you just kind of explain what bonding is for people who don't know?
Sure. So bonding it's a number 8 solid copper wire that gets run all the way around the pool, and it gets tied into any metal points that are around the pool. And then it also has to be in contact with the water at all times. And so what it does is if something shorts out in the pool, some electricity somehow gets into the pool, it's basically a grounding for that body of water, so that way the electricity doesn't carry through it. And so it's extremely important. And that's one thing that has been drilled into my head, is how important bonding is. And so that's something that really you don't want to skimp on.
Right.
You want to make sure that your contractor is hitting all their bonding points and making sure that they're getting it inspected. Where we're at, every inspector is different.
I was going to say, our inspectors are very thorough.
We have some thorough inspectors, and we have some that just take a look and okay, yeah, you look good. And so we have taken upon ourselves to, our thorough electrical inspector.
He's set our standards.
He has set our standards very, very high.
Yes.
And so now we just had an inspection with him, Thursday, and he literally said he tries to find something on every job. He tried to find something on this job, and he could not find anything.
Yeah.
And so we were very proud of that, because that's a huge
with him, that's a big win.
That's a big win. Because from the first pool that he inspected to us, a couple of years ago till now, we've done a great job. And hey, I'll credit to him for teaching us just to that high standard. So
yeah,
we're very fortunate about that. But so at the same time, the equipment pad's getting set up, and getting put into place. And so typically the pool's running within a week of it being put in the ground. The exception is, maybe in concrete, you've got to wait. Vinyl, depending on when that liner gets there, that might need to wait. But, fiberglass, that pool's typically running by, the first of the next week, if not that same week. So the quickest we've ever had a pool running was 3 days. I mean, dig to running water was 3 days. That was cruising. So, so, after that, you move into kind of the pool decking. There's the concrete, like I said, the concrete collar that goes around the pool that basically locks the shell into place, both in fiberglass and vinyl. That's going to do both of those. And then, that's what, if we're doing like a concrete paver coping or a natural stone coping, that will sit on top of that concrete collar.
Yeah, you won't see the concrete collar.
No, that's just underneath, and that's poured very thick. That is a structural part of the top of the pool to make sure that there's no flexing, there's no movement in the pool, and so that's a very important part, and it gets reinforced with some fiberglass re-rod and when it gets poured in place. But so then kind of moving out, once that's in, once the coping's in. Typically everything's been, excavated out for the hardscaping and the pool deck. But then that's when we'll start putting in, base material and either pavers or concrete. So we'll dive into that in another one. But, and that's kind of what, once the pool's done, the rest of the project
Yeah, and
starts.
once you get that pool deck on, that's when things finally actually start to come together and look like a real space.
Yeah, that's when it really starts to come together, is once the pool deck's on. My favorite part personally is when plants are in.
I know.
Plants that just absolutely make the project.
They do.
Having, I love when I'm designing to put in, really nice landscaping around, not too much to where it's maintenance, but just to soften it, because in a pool deck, we don't want to have this big commercial pool deck.
Right.
But just having the right, plant material, and then having grass or turf or something just to soften the space.
Soften it, yeah.
It really just makes it. So,
yeah.
Once that's all said and done, typically the last thing, your auto cover fabric will get put on if you do an auto cover. Typically last, we try to do it late, so that way that doesn't get destroyed, or it doesn't get, dirty and kind of damaged during construction. And then the final thing would be the fencing going around, whatever your barrier is for the project would get put in. And that's when you're, time to call for your final inspection. Yep. So final inspections, as long as you do all your other inspections, it's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy part of the process.
Yeah. So they're basically, the big thing with the final is they're just checking that barrier. Some municipalities will require alarms on the doors and windows if you have a fence or if you have an auto cover. It doesn't really matter. Usually it just depends on where you live. That can be a requirement. So they'll be checking for those. They'll be checking your auto cover if you have one. They're checking your fence, make sure that it has the self-latching gates.
Lockable.
Yep.
Lockable latches.
Yep.
Yep. We had one inspector, the fence got put up just a little bit too tall, and we had to make it not as much of a gap on the bottom. It was 2 inches, but we got to do what we got to do. So.
Yep. They have those inspections for a reason, so
yeah,
that's a good thing.
Yep. So typically in the first part of the process, the pre-project, planning
so initial phone call, on-site consultation, design phase.
Yep. So what we've tracked in our company is from that first phone call until the project is designed and signed, it's about 60 days.
Yes.
Now that can be sped up depending on the complexity of the design and the project and how quick you can say yes, and it can be delayed depending on how quickly you say yes in the design process.
Right. So if you have a fairly simple design with not a lot of extra elements like pavilions and custom other things that we might need to get quoted on, it can be a lot faster than that. But yeah, if you're doing very custom space, you're probably minimum 60 days.
Yeah. So just with the design process in itself, we're trying to crank them out as quickly as possible. It typically takes 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
During the busy season, it's 4 weeks. We really try not to let it be any longer than that, but there's so many things that go into it, because we're also getting specific material pricing and availabilities from suppliers at that same time. So there's a lot of moving parts and things that need to fall into line together. So yeah.
And then once that is approved, when we move into permitting, typically the permitting process is going to depend on where you live. It's so funny that it's like that, but some places require a zoning permit. Some places require
soil
erosion permit. Sometimes you can get a soil erosion waiver. Everywhere is going to require a building permit. And the typical permitting application process, I would say on average takes 2 to 5 weeks.
Yeah. I was gonna say like a month. But there's some that you just submit the plans and they're just like, oh,
and then a couple days later they're approved.
Yeah. So one thing that will definitely help speed it up, whether you're working with us or your builders, if you have a site survey for your property, giving that to your builder, that just saves some time on either us having to go find it, you having to go find it, or having to have it done, in the first place. Like you might need to have a surveyor come out and actually resurvey the property if you're trying to get really close to the property line on certain things. You want to make sure that you have those proper setbacks. So
Right.
there's a lot of resources that we use to get them close. But if there's a time where we just ran into it where a homeowner just signed with us, but they didn't have, it's a new house, they didn't have the survey from the old homeowner, and so they had to get it surveyed, even though we have this documentation and we know, and
we've taken our measurements and everything else.
We know we have a really, really good idea, but what would really be a problem is if we put that pool in and we're a foot too close and we have to go way backwards. And so
yeah, and those will also help us determine like if there's a well and septic, things like that.
Yeah. Yep. Just determine most things that are reported to your county and your municipality. We'll be able to make sure we have the proper setbacks and whatnot for those. So, and then once the permit's all good to go, I mean, typically we try to start the project pretty quickly after the permit is good to go.
Yeah, so most permits expire in 6 months. Mm-hmm. So we want to get that done and approved, that final inspection approved within 6 months.
Yeah, and kind of the one exception is like when a project starts late fall and it goes through the winter, where we're at. I mean, we can't always build through the winter, and so sometimes we have to do an extension or whatever. So, and then to start the construction process, I mean, the timeline typically for a fiberglass pool, we tell people, we're kind of try to use a big range, but I would say 2 weeks for a fiberglass pool. And again, it really comes down to just the pool. Yeah. And it really comes down to, weather and logistics are the big factors on those. We plow through a lot of the weather, but sometimes logistics just don't fall into line all the time. And so, for a fiberglass pool, I'd say about 2 weeks. And then vinyl liner, pool is about the same timeline, but we say 2 to 4 weeks.
Just because it depends on how long it takes to get your liner measured and then ordered and in. And we cannot measure until the walls and everything are in the ground.
Yeah, we can't all the time. I mean, there's some, if it's a very simple pool layout, we can do it, but a lot of times we just like to wait just so that we get those exact measurements and get the best fit possible. So, so the pool portion is anywhere from, 2 to 4 weeks. During that, 2 to 4 week period, there's still a lot of things that are going. So there's the hardscape that's been going on. There's, basing in and getting whatever footings need to be installed. If there's pavilion or any gas lines, electrical lines, anything like that. So, but really, as far as the timeline goes on the rest of the project, it really depends on how big the project is.
Yeah, it depends on the project.
And how complex it is and how many subcontractors are involved. There's some projects that just get drug out because,
we're waiting on subs.
And so, and they're waiting on inspections and so on and so forth. So, a project, a basic pool project can, be anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, all the way up to a fully, custom design build project can be 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So, it really depends.
Yeah.
So I would say our average project last year was
3 months.
Maybe now 2
to 3.
2 to 3. Yeah. We were cruising there pretty good. So, and we did some very, very custom elaborate project. We did our biggest one last year, and that one rolled right along. So it helps when you have a big wide open space to work in and everybody's cruising. So, that kind of takes it through, the timeline, some delays that come up. Weather's our biggest enemy, really.
Yeah. So I would say some of the most common delays that we have on any given project can be change orders from a project that we're doing before yours. So if we're working on a project and that customer adds something or changes the scope of work to the job, that can delay your project. Weather is a huge one. We have gotten really good about working in the rain. We typically work through most weather, so we're doing okay with that one.
Yeah.
I would say another one is materials.
Yep.
So, we typically order that pool right away, but our supplier could have something come up where now they're making that shell later in their scheduling, and so.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is pool related. Our manufacturers are pretty good at making the pool shells. One manufacturer gets made in Australia, so that one, can have some hiccups
that
with
one, it. Yeah, has the most.
Yep. That one has some logistic things. So we really just try to sell what they have on hand. But, a big one that we run into is when we do a change order with a concrete paver material. Either could be a cap, could be a paver, could be anything, wall block, whatever. A lot of those materials get made. A lot of the materials that we use get made, made to order, made to, specifically be for that project. And so that can be that'll hold up 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And so a lot of the pavers we're using are, natural stone, which our supplier luckily has a great supply with them. And so we like to use natural stone as much as possible because.
And those can also be delayed, though, if it's certain coping, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it can take a while to get that
If there's
stuff.
some fabrication involved.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time we'll have that fabrication, already done. Unless it's a custom templated pool, that's completely different. That gets done after the pool's done. But, go natural stone.
I don't know. It takes just as long.
It does. I just like it. We'll dive into that.
It looks better. But
we'll have a great talk about the different paver surfaces. So
yeah.
Anything with hardscape. We just like hardscape.
Yeah. I'm trying to think other delays.
Those are the big ones.
Those are the big ones.
I mean, yeah. We try to just keep everything moving. And the biggest thing with delays is we try to be open with communication, because that's really what can be frustrating is you have no idea what's going on in a project. And, you think that these guys should be here, but they're not. And you're just, super upset. Well, communicating why we're not here. Hey, here's what's going on. It's such a simple thing to do, just to pick up the phone or send a text.
And that's, once we're already on site and then we've started the project too, you might notice, we're not there for a day or something. And you might be wondering what we have going on, or, it's a nice day. Why aren't they working? But it's most likely because we have another thing on another project.
Yeah. It's really funny too, because there's a point in time in a project where we are moving like lightning quick, things are getting done, we're cranking stuff out, it's changing by the hour. And then we hit that point in time where
you won't see us for a couple days.
Well, you just won't see anything really happen for a couple days, because we're doing some of these small little detail things.
Or we're waiting on materials.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it just comes down to communication.
Yep.
Having great communication. So, some common things that, we kind of touched on, what it is, but some common questions we have is, how bad will my yard be during the project? And
pretty bad.
It'll be pretty bad for a
while. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah. So what we do, especially in some smaller residential settings, is we'll set up a barrier. We'll actually put posts out and rope, so that way everybody knows who's coming on your project, that you need to stay within this barrier in the project. So we are not driving a skid steer, 30 feet over on your neighbor's property or way in the backyard where a skid steer doesn't really need to be. We'll make sure that we stay, really nice and tidy.
Yeah, we do everything we can to try and mitigate the disruption.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Another question is, when is the best time to start talking about a pool and the best time to install a pool? And really, it's year round.
I think the best time to start planning a pool project is in the winter.
Yeah. January.
Yeah.
I mean, right after the holidays.
Right.
Because if you hit April, May,
everyone's going to be busy.
Yeah, you're probably end of summer, if fall, if that.
If you're lucky.
If that. So,
the best time to install a pool,
the better.
Spring, summer.
Yeah, spring, summer. If you want to be swimming in it that same year, you really are going to have to start your project no later than the 4th of July.
Right.
I mean, right around there, because, by the time you start, you go that, 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, you might have a month left. So spring earlier is better, but we also have people who say, all right, we know we're not going to start this year, or, we know we're not going to swim this year, and we'll do it in the fall, and we'll push them to, a lot of people say, hey, let's just do it for next spring. Well, if we start in the fall, we're going to be done by spring by the time it's swim season. So we are completely pulled out, and you have your yard back with your finished product. And so I would say fall is another good time if you don't want to try and swim that year.
Right.
Yeah. So, another thing is, how many will my project stay on budget? It's kind of a loaded question, because the way that our proposals work is, what's on that proposal is the final product.
That's your price.
That's the price of what you're going to pay.
Yeah.
With the exception of if you make a change to the scope of work or a change order.
Right.
And that's when the price will change. So whether we add something, whether we make, the space bigger, whether we change the material, that would be a change order. And so that's typically what's going to raise the budget, raise the cost of the project.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that is just paying attention to the proposals that you're looking at and the contracts that you're looking at before you sign them, because some companies do not include everything in their proposal, which is crazy. But if you read the fine print, it might say you have an allotment for excavation, or your electrical is only this much included, or some of them don't even include base material, and then they just charge you based on how much they end up using.
Yeah.
So you really do have to look at that in depth. And I can say for us personally, we've eaten a lot of cost.
Yeah.
Because we don't think it's right to do that to homeowners.
Yeah.
And so we just say, you know what, this is what we told you it was going to be, so this is what it is.
Yeah, just ask questions. I mean, asking questions on, hey, what happens if this, comes up? What happens if you need more material? And, case in point, we had one of our guys dug a pool. He didn't look at the right dig sheet. He looked at a different dig sheet and dug the pool wider than what it needed to be by 2 feet. And, that eats up a lot of material, and it's not right for us to go to the homeowner and say, hey, we used more material because this guy over excavated. Yep. That's just something that we take on, and,
right.
we eat as a company, and that's really one of those tough pills to swallow, and it's a learning lesson. So, another one we did, we didn't charge the homeowner, but we had to dig out a massive stump this last summer. I mean,
and it is in our contract that we can't control what's underground.
Yep.
So we could have absolutely charged that to them, but we don't like to.
It took an hour. I
right.
mean, it was a big stump, so
just be aware of that when you're looking at a contract, and ask those questions. Hey, what if this comes up? What if I have this underground and I don't know about it?
Yeah.
What are you going to charge me to handle that situation? Because once they start digging, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Not get your pool installed?
Right. Yep. It's gotta come out. And so we ended up digging out way more than what we needed to. But, at the same time, I just was like, that for me as a builder, it's not worth to, go to my homeowner and say, oh, hey, I hit a stump. It's going to be another $500. Like,
right.
We got it done. We kept the project moving, and they were happy in the end. So,
right.
Yeah. Any other questions you want to
that one. So it says, how long before I can swim in my pool?
Oh, yeah.
So the real answer to that is as soon as the final inspection is approved.
That is the official answer. So, yeah, you should wait until you are completely finalized out. Project is done. But you know what? When I'm not there,
I don't know what you do.
I don't know what goes on. So
I'm going to tell you though, not until that inspection is approved.
Yes. Yes. So, but yeah, it's a fun process. So
it is long. It takes a while. It's messy. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
It's worth it in the end.
And it's so rewarding when you get to jump in that pool.
Yep. The transformation that happens and just the lifestyle, the memories that you get to make. I mean, it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah.
So we absolutely love what we do. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. We've been on here for, almost 40 minutes now. So,
okay.
But this was a good one. And this episode, this is episode 2. We have some outro music that we're going to queue up, but,
okay.
I think that's it.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening to us, and we hope you guys enjoyed it. If you are enjoying this, please leave us a review, hit that like button, subscribe, do all the things. Next week, we are going to be talking about the different types of pools that we can do in the backyard. That one is actually shot at another location, but yeah, thanks for joining us at Elevate at Home.